The remedy. The remedy. What's underneath the situation you don't realize? So let's examine with a critical eye. Put on your glasses and let it magnify the truth that lies hidden under all those lies. Cause everybody has nobility, and if you look beyond what your eyes can see, you'll see they're just like you and me, and now we're giving you the remedy. Welcome to the Remedy Podcast. This podcast is a project of WEBB Squared, a North Carolina nonprofit that works to increase wealth for Black businesses through connection, network, and opportunity. Our host is Stephanie Terry, the Executive Director of WEBB Squared, and our co-hosts are Associate Director Rinnie and myself, Mashallah Salaam. I am the Media and Production Specialist. In this podcast, we hope to bring consciousness to the racial divide and speak on emerging new narratives about race. Thanks for joining us today. We hope you will enjoy the podcast.
Hey, Rinnie, Mashallah. I didn't start off with
it's
that one.
It's not Podcast Tuesday. It's Podcast Wednesday today.
Listen, let's talk about why it's Podcast Wednesday instead of Podcast Tuesday.
Well, it's because you guys were working your butts off this weekend at the Pepperfest.
That, and we all were working our butts off to get a grant in, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it was going to be Podcast Tuesday yesterday. And as I was dragging my tired self, I was like, just stay home. Why are you doing this? And I was like, no, because it's Podcast Tuesday. And my husband was like, they're not going to know. Like, you can still get it out. Just reschedule. Yeah. And I was like, you don't know what you're talking about. But my body was like, yes, he does. So just when I was about to, I said, you know what? We can just reschedule this because I really need to close my eyes. I picked up my phone to call Rinnie, who had texted me and said, call me. And she said, how about we just reschedule?
Wow.
That's how it happened. Then I said, let me call Mashallah, who was about to get in her car.
Yeah.
And what did I say, Mashallah?
You said to just stay and work on the grant. And then we're going to do the podcast on Wednesday.
Anyway, so
and I just didn't feel like, we want to be energized, and I didn't hear it in your voice. And I'm like, if we're not energized, let's just not do it, because we don't want to show up and just have a conversation where we're all like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired.
You know, that's that social conditioning. That's that conditioning, right? We work for ourselves, and yet we were still like, I was learning to come in and put it in for the man. There is no man. The man lives in my head.
Yeah. That's so refreshing, isn't it? That there is no man that we're answering to.
No, work does not have to kill us and exhaust us. Like, you know, there's something wrong if we're prioritizing whatever that was. I was prioritizing over the well-being of my body. So anyway, so that's how it's Podcast Wednesday. Woo-hoo!
So tell me, you all came to the Pepperfest. How was the Pepperfest? What was that like?
It was amazing. I really didn't know what to expect because I'd never been to the Pepperfest before, and I just saw so many vendors and people, and I was like, whoa.
You know, I had never been either. That was my first time. I didn't get to see the vendors because I was serving up vegan mac and cheese.
You were a vendor.
Five pepper chow.
What's chow chow?
Chow chow.
I don't know what chow chow is.
Chow chow. Girl, let me tell you about chow chow. So it's cabbage, it's fermented cabbage and apple cider vinegar and a little sugar and peppers. And it's really good for you. I'm sure that if you took it to a lab, it would have lots of probiotics. You know, almost like the, what do we drink? The kombucha.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's an old way of preserving vegetables out of your garden harvest, like in the end of harvest time in August.
Is it similar to kimchi in Korea?
It's similar to kimchi, except you don't bury it in the ground and let it ferment for months.
Okay.
But you can though. It's like between a kimchi and a sauerkraut.
Okay.
It's a real southern thing, either as a relish or as a side to like a really rich dish.
Like your mac and cheese?
Like the mac and cheese. I'm supposed to bring you some mac and cheese, right? I have some.
I'm sure that I will have ample opportunity to eat your amazing vegan mac and cheese.
Yeah, it was really good.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. You know what I love about it? Because I'm lactose intolerant, it does not mess with my stomach.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, but Pepperfest was amazing. It was a lot of fun. It wore me out.
Mm-hmm.
It reminded me why I don't cook anymore. I can't do it. What about you, Rinnie? What did you do this weekend?
I am just taking care of Miss Kitty and cleaning my house and getting it ready to put it on the market because I think I'm moving over here to Pittsburgh at some point. Met with the realtor on Monday and had a nice conversation, and I am actually very excited about it.
Nice.
That's my life right now.
So it's raining. All right, Rinnie, what are we talking about today?
So today we're going to talk about perspective, in particular how it relates to Black entrepreneurship. We will be looking at the question of what lens are we looking through when we talk about Black entrepreneurship in our work as a nonprofit.
So I'll say this. I don't know how I found this article by this woman named Felecia Hatcher. She's a rock star. But she wrote this article about how too often we talk about Black entrepreneurs in the negative, right? The things they don't have, how they have fewer sales, how they have higher rates of failure. And this deficit perspective completely ignores all of the assets that Black entrepreneurs have, right? And it also adds to the environment of why, culturally, it adds to the environment of why Black entrepreneurs are not looked at as like valuable places to invest. You know, so it kind of undermines the value and it reinforces this idea that investing in Black entrepreneurs and Black businesses is not a valuable thing to do, you know? And so I was like, holy smokes, Rinnie, read this. And I said, you know, we may have to redo the whole website. I'm just playing, Rinnie.
Don't tell me I have to redo the whole website, please. But I mean, it did really open up, you know, my own thinking around, you know, we talk about WEBB Squared, like we're going to create impactful mindset programs and do individualized coaching with people to make sure that they have all these tangibles to start their business. But this really did kind of like make me think about how we approach people in conversation when they come to us and say, I have a business idea, to really like play off of their aspirations and their talents and their innovation rather than to think about the things they don't have.
That's right. And how, Mashallah, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I actually thought about how the representation of Black people in general usually starts with the negatives. I thought about that with media especially, but I really was interested to see how it affected Black businesses, and I'm trying to start a business and I'm wondering how that affects the way that even I see myself.
You know, I was, the hubby and I were watching a movie yesterday. I think it was called Roxanne Shante. My 80s people from New York, y'all know who Roxanne Shante.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Kind of, yeah.
She was this, one of the first female hip hop artists that had a one-hit record. So it talked about just that moment in time for her when, you know, she was, in poverty and just like how that all came about. But then it brought me to this larger question because I was thinking about our podcast conversation today, and I was like, that is a great example of an asset-based perspective. like how hip hop music, right, which wasn't even a genre back in it came out of the 70s, 80s music, how these men and women, rappers, producers, dancers, how they were able to embrace a culture that created $1 billion industry, right? And they did it with the things that they had at the time. They were not thinking about what they didn't have. They were embracing what they did have. And they came with their talents and aspirations and their belief in their creativity. And their market was like us, their peers, right? And now you've got, individuals that are thriving from that, like each one standing on each other's shoulder, bringing that uniqueness and creativity. They were vulnerable, expressing their emotions. Like, it's just like huge. It's a huge asset-based perspective to just how incredible and powerful it is when we begin to frame and name what we're doing based on the gifts and the things that we have versus what we don't have.
I hear you, and I guess what I'm thinking that as you're talking is just how difficult it is to make that shift, and how difficult it is to change that lens. As somebody, to get personal a little bit, as somebody who suffers from major anxiety and depression, a lot of that comes out of this like feeling I don't have, like I'm a failure, or I don't have this, or I don't have that. And I know how difficult it is to try to change that perspective internally for myself. And I just think of how, to make that shift culturally and collectively, like, what do we do? How do we get there culturally to kind of make that shift so that we're talking not only about ourselves in a more asset-based perspective, but also Black entrepreneurship, the work that we're doing, really helping people inspire themselves to see themselves differently and get out of this like cultural mindset that there's a deficit in how we look at, Black people, Black entrepreneurship. Does that make sense?
I really thought about how blessed I am to have supportive people in my life. And even just when I was a kid, I used to create paper dolls, and I was always creative, and I got that from my parents. And my dad saw how much I enjoyed making paper dolls and drawing the clothes for them and cutting them out. And I said to him that I wanted to be a designer. And so he took me to the store and got me this amazing like portfolio to put my designs in, and he handed it to me and told me that he believes in me, and that really inspired me. And just to know that him and my mom and even more people, like their friends and my family, really just saw something in me, encouraged me throughout my life. So I feel like having people that actually believe in you really creates a world of difference and can really encourage Black business owners or people who want to be entrepreneurs.
Or can help you see what you can't see.
Yeah.
Help you see what you can't see. That's true, Mashallah, because I think about myself. I remember one of my best friends, God bless her, rest her soul. She just passed this year. But I remember when we first met, it was like 20-something years ago. And she would say all this stuff about me, like all this good stuff. And I was like, what the heck is she saying? Because I'm surely not feeling it. And I can remember, I'll share this. I've worked at many jobs, making, sometimes, minimum wage or just above minimum wage. And I can remember that the owners of these businesses, the actual owners, not even just my managers, but the owners, for some odd reason, I would be talking with them, like there was a relationship there. And they were always, like I remember one guy worked in this deli in Florida, and he wanted me to come with him to talk to the baker about the new kind of bread that he wanted to make. And he wanted me to advise him. Now, mind you, I'm making minimum wage, right? Mm-hmm. He wanted me to advise him, and then he was asking me if I could make it myself. And I'm like, why is he, what? And then he said to me, he said, you kind of remind me of Maya Angelou. And I was like, what is this white man talking about? Like, what is he talking about? And so I'm bringing that up to say is that sometimes, so you asked about like, how do we move from this place? Sometimes it's the people that are around us, whether they're our parents or just people that are giving you clues to the things, like a whole new frame of what they see versus what you see. Because what we see is conditioning is very powerful. Mm-hmm. Social conditioning is very powerful. Mm-hmm.
It's so hard to break free from it.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, it's like the more I read and the more I learn and the more that I feel like I don't have a sense of history, that education was lacking. It's just so difficult to break free and to find yourself in these new paradigms and say, wow, I had no idea.
What lens are we looking through when we think about ourselves? And when we see ourselves, when we look at the world outside of us, what lens are we looking through? Are we looking through a lens that says that you're not enough, you're a victim, you're not powerful, you don't have enough, you ain't never gonna be enough, Or are we looking through a lens that says the exact opposite? And if we're being super honest, do you even want to change that story? How many people have, look, I ain't going to tell on nobody else, I'll tell on myself. How many times does somebody say, oh, I see this, a beautiful quality. And then I'm convincing them that they're wrong. Like, what is that about? Like, seriously, I don't do that no more, by the way. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
But we do that. Like, if you are really honest, we do that. Like, no, here's all the reasons why you're wrong.
Are you seeing if you could easily change their mind to see if what they mean is actually true, that they mean what they're saying?
No, I think this is my opinion, and then y'all weigh in. I think it's because even if we create something so awful, I want to say so effed up, right? We made it.
Yeah.
And so if we make it, we're going to defend it. We're going to protect it. We're going to value it, even if it's completely like wrong. And so we would rather be right. And we go about our whole life defending our miscreations.
Wow, that's a very interesting perspective. And those miscreations kind of seep into our psyches in a deeper way than our the goodness. I mean, I have read that for every negative thing that happens to us as a human being, it takes like 7 to 10 positive things to change the energy of that one negative thing. And the power of this like negative perspective is so overwhelmingly strong in our human psyche. You can have a beautiful day walking around just talking to everybody, but it takes like one negative comment from somebody to bring you into a tailspin and like negate the whole day, just because the power of that. And so that's where it gets back to the question sort of like, how do we make sure that when we're coaching and working with an entrepreneur, that we continue to always keep in mind this asset-based perspective and meet them in a place that's empowering, where we lift up their innovation, their aspirations, and their talents in order for them to have a successful business.
Well, we can't do it if we ain't doing it in ourselves. I tell you that.
No, I think it's very true that you do have to also have that within yourself, because it doesn't matter how many people tell you like, oh, this is great, this is awesome, and then you're thinking, oh no, like I'm terrible, or this whatever I made is terrible. It's just not gonna get through. And I guess that's where therapy comes in, which I think should be something that we also discuss as well. Because if your mind is not right, then you won't be able to reach that point that you're trying to reach, or maybe you don't even feel like you deserve it. Or maybe you might not feel like you deserve that success.
That's a really powerful point you just made. You feel like you don't deserve it.
And then that's where like self-sabotage comes in. If you feel like you don't deserve it, then when you start to feel like you're on the verge of success, you might do something to totally undermine that.
Yes.
So then self-sabotage yourself. And then that self-sabotage is just another example of like, oh, like I don't have it in me to do this.
Right.
I don't have it in me to succeed.
Because you have a deep-seated belief that you made about yourself, or you have an identity that you say who you are, that you will make true. Whether it kills you, whether it destroys, other people's, what they see about you, whether it's harmful, we want to be right. We rather be right than happy.
Yeah.
We go to war because we rather be right than actually have to change our minds. We destroy our marriages and relationships because we rather be right than even consider that there's a whole nother way of looking at this thing.
Yeah.
And we will kill each other, especially when it comes to race, because we rather be right than even consider that there may be a whole nother way of looking at how we got here and who we say we are. And this is where the rubber meets the road. And we won't do this work of WEBB Squared. I call it as unhealed healers. Because it's a hypocrite. Right? And plus you can't give what you don't have. Now, are we going to be completely healed? No, but we can be healing healers, like all of us healing each other together. Yeah. But we're not going to be like, and then we go home and we think we're shit. Know what I mean?
No, I hear you. It's so hard though. I mean, it's just so hard to get out of that mindset that I'm less than. You're right. It takes a little bit of like self-reflection, maybe some therapy, and just to kind of like make that shift.
That reminds me of this poem, and I remember hearing it in that movie Akeelah and the Bee. It's by Marianne Williamson, and just like this first part, it says, "Our greatest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that frightens us." And it also says, we ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? And that was just so powerful.
I love that poem. Let's get to this hard. This why it's so hard. So why is this hard? So let's kind of unpack this a little bit. It's hard because the miscreations grow out of beliefs. And these beliefs live in two places. They live in our biases, our unconscious biases that were formed and inherited. And then they also live in our, I call this like that chart on the wall, our cognitive fallacies, or our faulty ways of coming to conclusions about things. And these are the areas that we refuse to question. We don't question our beliefs and our thoughts. We just go with them.
Mm-hmm.
And so the very first thing, and then the other reason why it's hard is because we've been taught, especially in this society, is to not be comfortable with emotions, to not feel our emotions. And so not questioning your beliefs and not feeling your emotions, you literally create a monster, because we're emotional beings. Like a human being is a spiritual being in a physical body. And the reason why we're in a physical body is so that we can feel emotions. And so we get here and say, oh, we're not feeling no emotions. And so the physical mind it's like a computer, it's a program. And so just like realizing, like bringing that to our awareness can be a point of leverage for the beginning of the possibility of some change. You know, I don't have the answers. I'm just thinking deeply with my friends.
You know, I went through a spiritual experience back in like March, April, May, June, July, for several months. And it was just sort of like this like spiritual reboot. And it's just easy to see how we can have these shifts, but then, you know, the deeper cultural programming sets in, and, you know, we just have to constantly reboot and remind ourselves, like you said, that we're spiritual beings. And if we don't remind ourselves, then we get kind of lost in this like cultural perspective of who we are and who other people are in relationship to us. And it was refreshing to have that opportunity to reboot. But I find myself lately feeling like how I used to feel before. This really helps because, like, I talked about anxiety and depression earlier on in the podcast. You know, I've been feeling that again lately, where it's kind of like coming out of that, it felt like in the spring. And this conversation is a reminder of that. Like, I rebooted for several months. And now I just probably have to take the time to consciously reboot and say, okay, I'm going to reboot. And start just kind of like consciously reminding myself, I'm going to see the world through a different lens. I'm going to see the world through a different perspective. And I think that kind of addresses the how. It's just to be very conscious about, you know, making sure I'm moving through the world in a different way. Which goes to what Mashallah was saying last week about how we need to, you know, what would life be like if we just consciously made decisions about how we're going to live. This is just, you know, reaffirming what she said last week about that.
When you talked about how we're like computers, I was thinking about programming, how you program a computer to perform a certain way. And then I think about the media and television, how we also call that programming, and how we take in that information and it affects the way that we do things in our lives and the way that we think and the way that we interact with others and ourselves. Sometimes people say that they feel reborn again after they go through a spiritual experience that makes them feel like a completely new person. And sometimes we have to deprogram the negative things and negative information that we took in.
Yeah, I just remembered. Step number 1. You have to tell your stories. You will not give up anything if at first you are not able to express your stories. And not just tell them to an empty room. Your stories need to be validated. Like, somebody needs to listen and say, oh, wow, I hear that. You need to be able to tell your stories. Like, what happened to you? Who's ever asked you that?
Very few people. We just are so, you know, we live in this world as like worker bees and like, you know, army ants marching along. Very few people stop and say, hey.
What happened to you? What's this journey been like? Tell me about it. Who was on it? What did you feel about it? Why do you think it happened the way it happened? That validation, that expression is critical. If we don't tell our stories, there's no way we're going to give them up. Right?
Yeah.
That's like crazy. Who would, like, no, you're going to validate my story first. So can we just start there? Because we're dedicated to changing from a deficit framing of Black entrepreneurs to an asset-based framing of Black entrepreneurs. And so we have to practice what that means. And that means when we meet our entrepreneurs, that's one of the first questions that we ask. So,
What's your story?
Yeah, what happened to you? Tell me about it. How'd you get here?
Yeah.
Where did this come from? How did you feel about it?
Yeah, I remember meeting somebody a while back, and we spent like a weekend together, and I felt like when that weekend was over, like, how did I not get his story? Or how did I not hear who he was as a human being? And it was really sad for me not to get his story.
Yeah. So,
but speaking of storytelling,
yes,
we're going to be telling a story on October 23rd about WEBB Squared, aren't we?
We are. I'm so excited. We finally got our people confirmed, and we are having a coming out extravaganza gala. My husband said it's not a gala. Gala's I was like, look, shut up.
This is a gala.
It's a gala. He said, galas, you dress in gowns. I said, yeah, I'm going to be in a gown. I'm wearing a gown. I'm wearing an African gown.
I'm excited.
Yeah, so I'm gallering it up.
I'm probably going to wear jeans and a t-shirt, but
No, okay. No, you heard it. We'll talk offline.
Wear your ball gown.
like I have a ball gown.
So listen, here's the thing. We're calling it, we've got 3 names for it.
No, we have one name for it.
What is it?
It is our WEBB Squared launch and fundraising gala, and we're presenting the history of Black entrepreneurship through music and art.
Woohoo! So it's Saturday, October 23rd.
From 4 to 6 p.m. at the plant.
First off, it's going to be visually stunning. We're still figuring that part out.
Yeah.
It's going to be stunning. Then we have the John Brown Quintet. So first off, just check out the name, John Brown. Y'all know who John Brown is? I was like, oh no, we must go with these brothers. But John Brown, not the John Brown, well, of course not the John Brown, but just the John Brown today, is an award-winning, Grammy-nominated musician. And I believe he liked musicians at Duke. He's got like 5 different bands. He has this whole youth thing. He sits in with the North Carolina Symphony, and he's bringing his quintet, and they're going to perform a beautiful melody of the different genres of Black people and music. And so it's going to be amazing. And then tell us about Rob.
We have a comedian, Rob Santos. He's coming down from Connecticut, and he is pretty dope. We know him through our Commonwealth network of entrepreneurs. And so we get a chance to see him every Thursday. He's really funny. I follow him on Instagram and just became Facebook friends. And I think I'm going to do an interview with him shortly for a blog.
Yeah.
And sit down and just laugh with him. He's very, very funny. And he's working right now on a TV show, which he's hoping to have streamed later this year. And it's called Beige, I believe.
Yeah.
But he's really great. And we'll provide more information about him on our Facebook page and Instagram and all that stuff.
And he's smart too. You know, the best comedians are like really smart and thoughtful. Yeah. And then our keynote speaker, oh my gosh, his name is Lord Watson. And he is the founder and CEO of the Penny Foundation, which is one of 3 Black-led community philanthropic foundations in the nation.
Wow.
And so he's coming to share some words of wisdom and to, show his support and partnership for WEBB Squared. We're also going to have Corinda Roebuck, who she'll be on this podcast probably, maybe we'll get her on sooner rather than later. But she's my ace boom coon. She's the executive director of Chatham Organizing for Racial Equity, which WEBB Squared is a program of when we work here in Chatham.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
What is ace boom coon?
Ace-
I don't think I've ever heard that phrase.
Ace boom coon in the hole. I mean, that's my girl. That's my
I've never heard that. I was just like, wow.
Corinda is a powerhouse. She's an amazing Afro-Latina, badass rock star. And so she's going to be there. Oh, we got to lift up Dave Gold. What's Dave? He's our spiritual Jewish beacon brother light. Just
Soul brother?
Soul brother.
As a white woman, can I use the word soul brother?
Yes. Soulmate. He's my soulmate in business.
Yeah.
He's just an amazing, this whole WEBB Squared collaboration and emergence, he was integral, right? This came out of his extraordinary vision and his insistence on leading with the spirit. And so Dave Gold will be there. And then we got our sister, Mashallah's mom, an amazing prolific artist named Demita Hicks. And she's going to have her magnificent art all around so that we can showcase just all the ways in which this Black genius expresses itself. And so, who else? Are we missing anybody else?
Oh, we've got town officials, local officials. We'll have African drumming. We've got some African drummers coming.
Jelly. We heard Jelly.
And Mashabani from South Africa.
Yeah, we heard Jelly at the Pepper Fest. And woo! I thought he was just a drummer, but he's a singer. And he's got a band. And he sounds good.
Yeah.
He's really good.
Yeah,
Did
it
you
was a
enjoy
lot
it?
of fun.
Yeah, so he's going to be there opening us up. And then tell us about the South African drummer.
I don't know much about him. His name is Mashabani. He's from South Africa. I do know that he's building a house for his parents in South Africa. As soon as he's done with the launch, he's heading to South Africa to work on the house.
Wow.
So I love the fact that we'll have Senegal and South Africa represented. You know what I mean? That's like powerful. So the launch is going to be amazing. Oh, we forgot about Josh. You all, we raved about Josh on our last podcast. He will be dancing.
Wow. Yay.
To these drummers.
Wow. I'm excited.
So I'm like super excited. So where can they get the tickets, Rinnie?
You can get them online at our website, webbsquared.org, WEBB, and we'll make sure that the link to the tickets are online when we do this, promote this podcast.
So yes, get your tickets. Come, it's outdoors. We'll be in masks. So everybody will be required to wear a mask. So no worries about the pandemic. We're going to be super, super duper safe. It's going to be an amazing event. We will be coming together like a village to do this most important work. So we hope to see you there. So
the revolution begins with dialogue.
Thank you, Mashallah.
is closing us up today.
Yes.
Goodbye, y'all. Till next week.
All right. Till next week. Have a fantastic day.
This has been a joint podcast of WEBB Squared and Afro Future Productions. For those of you interested in learning more about our work at WEBB Squared, you can find out more at webbsquared.org. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. This is our conscious conversation. We hope you will subscribe today on your favorite podcast platform. Join the Remedy Membership Forum on Patreon to join us monthly for our members-only discussion. That's it for today. Until next week, thanks for listening. What's underneath the situation you don't realize. So let's examine with a critical eye. Put on your glasses and let it magnify the truth that lies hidden under all those lies. Cause everybody has nobility, and if you look beyond what your eyes can see, you'll see they're just like you and me, and now we're giving you the remedy. Remedy.